Hello. I want to talk about a particular phenomenon, um, connect with feminism, third wave feminism specifically. Anybody who has followed my channel for a while will know that I have made a few videos on this subject. Um, and I'd rather actually not make that many, but the thing is, there's always sort of things that are noteworthy to talk about, and yeah. Um, but there is something that I feel is quite an important aspect to all of this, and that is actually communication. Um, I'm someone who occasionally I've had very, very strong views on social and political issues, not just this, other issues as well. And I'll admit that sometimes I'm not the calmest person in the world. Sometimes I do have a temper problem. I'm honest about that. And it is something that I'm trying to work on and something that I'm trying to, I don't necessarily show it in my videos, but sometimes I do get very angry. I don't think anger is necessarily a bad thing, because you'd be robotic if you never felt anger at what you as an individual perceive to be injustice. Now, I certainly don't believe that feminism is the only issue of contention, and it's not like, yeah, it's not the only issue, but it is something that bugs me because I do think it is quite a prevalent thing in this country. So when I'm talking about feminism, I'm specifically talking about Western third wave feminism. I just want to be very clear about that because YouTube is obviously an international channel. There may be people from different parts of the world watching this, and I want to be very clear and go on the record and say that I am talking here specifically about, well, I'll really narrow it down, I'll just say British feminism. Um, I'm not talking about specific women's rights movements in parts of the world. I would argue they are needed, like really needed. I'm talking about third wave British feminism, okay? Um, I think that there's a phenomenon with this in that any man who has ever been in the debate with a feminist will know just how nauseating it can be. I suppose it's part and parcel of political or social debates that the temperature can rise when two people have a different view and they're determined to get their point across, and sometimes it becomes childish. What I always try to avoid doing is avoid petty mudslinging. Um, I'm not saying I'll never do that, but I do try to avoid it. I try to make my points, and I'll make them in a candid and sometimes blunt way, but I try to be mature about it. I try to be objective. And in every video I make, I always try to look at as much of the picture as possible, rather than just looking at one angle. So, for example, with feminism, there is definitely women's issues in this country. I'm not saying that there isn't. And I think guys need to recognize that. But the feminist movement also needs to understand how it comes across and why it is so off-putting to so many people, not just men, women as well. I stand by the basic principle of everything I've said in my videos about this because I really do think it is noticeable. But on a practical level, when I've been involved in debates with a lot of feminists, and I'm not going to say everyone, because I have been in a few very civil debates where I've had an exchange of ideas and I've actually found common ground, and it's generally been quite mature. That's in a few cases. But I have to say, the majority of cases, that hasn't been my experience. My experience has been dealing with someone who, frankly, is doesn't seem capable of handling an adult debate. Usually, it starts something like this. It starts with, "Oh, well, feminism is just about equality. That's all we believe in." Incidentally, I'm talking about online debates, but I've also had real life experience. Um, yeah, so it starts off with that sort of pitch, like, "Oh, it's just to do with equality." Now, who's going to argue with that? I mean, as a principle, who's going to argue that equality is a bad thing? No one is. So on the surface, that sounds like a very reasonable pitch. But the problem I have with this is it's fundamentally dishonest. It really is. The third wave feminist movement really is not interested in equality. What it is interested in is privilege. So what they will do is they will focus on issues that do impact women. Granted, they do. Um, there are issues that do impact women, but then they distort the overall picture to suggest that we are living in this overlooming patriarchy that keeps women down. Now, the reality is so far removed from that. I mean, if you look at everything, if you look at the whole picture, the reality is so far removed from that concept that it is shameful that they continuously do that. And in my view, that is a divisive approach, and it's why I'm so skeptical of modern feminism. I think it is a fundamentally divisive ideology, and I think all divisive ideologies have to be treated with suspicion. But what I find in terms of a debate perspective is when you sort of go one on one and try to have a civilized debate with a feminist, someone who identifies himself as a feminist, it's very difficult because the other person this is my experience, they tend to automatically take a victimhood mentality. And they automatically, there is an irony about this because feminists are always preaching about how women need to be strong and independent. But if a man and a woman has an argument, and let's say the woman is a feminist that identifies herself with a feminist, 99% of the time, she will distort the argument, and it could be an argument that has absolutely nothing to do with any of these issues. It could be an argument over something really trivial and stupid, and it might well be that both people are at fault. But if the woman is a feminist, she will automatically in her mind think, "Oh, this man is bullying me. This man is talking down to me because he's a man and I'm a woman," and they bring gender into it. I've had experience of this quite recently. And it's a difficult one because if you're being portrayed to be the bad guy, it's quite difficult to get out of that stigma. It's a little bit like being slandered as a racist or a sexist or a homophobe. If you're slandered in that sort of way, then it's no matter how reasonable you try to be and no matter how valid your points are, that slander is very powerful. And I deeply resent how they do that. Now, that indicates to me that actually feminists are not interested in an equilibrium, because if they're having an argument about something that has nothing to do with these issues, then they'll use a victimhood mentality. Oh, it must be because I'm a woman. And I've seen this occasionally with some female politicians, I have to say. I'm not going to say everyone, but I have seen it with some, which is basically along the lines of if they don't get their own way, they will use the sexism card. I know that will be a controversial comment, but to cite an example, Caroline Flint, when she fell out with Gordon Brown, she immediately used the sexism card. Oh, it's because I'm a woman. Now, I wasn't in cabinet meetings. I don't know everything that went on. But the fact of the matter is, politics is a tough business. And there are plenty of men that get demoted from their positions. There are plenty of men that have to leave cabinet or senior positions for one reason or another. So why is it that when women politicians get into these situations, more often than not, some, I'm emphasizing some here, will then automatically say it's because I'm a woman. Now, the irony about this is Gordon Brown, as Prime Minister, had the power to decide who he promoted. He promoted her to cabinet level. Now, yeah, some sexist. He clearly has such contempt for women. He sees them as wallpaper, I think that's how she put it, that he promotes them to cabinet level. If Gordon Brown was really such a sexist, surely he wouldn't have bothered promoting any women. So that just flies. And I think what probably happened was they had an argument. They had a heated argument over some policy area. She resented it and she wanted to badmouth him to the press. That's how I take it. And like I say, I wasn't there, but Caroline Flint's a feminist, and this is pretty much what feminists do. If they don't get their own way, they immediately assume it's sexism. And I'm fed up with it, actually. I'm fed up with this sort of approach. It's like, just take some responsibility and accept that in an argument situation, it is not always to do with gender. If you truly believe in equality, then you will agree that men have a right to argue their corner as well. And just because a man is defending himself does not mean he is doing it because he looks down on you or because he thinks he's superior to you. When I get into an argument with a woman, which is not very common, I'm pleased to say. It's quite rare, but when I do, I'm not arguing with her because I look down on her. I'm arguing with her because I have a difference of opinion, because I think she's in the wrong, or because I think that she said something that is unacceptable. It's not because I look down on her. I mean, I've been in plenty of arguments with guys as well, probably a lot more, in fact. So I just resent the way that feminists will use that as that they will bring gender into it when in many cases it's got nothing to do with it. And I'm fed up with seeing the number of people who are talking about the three female leaders in this general election. That's Natalie Wood, Nicola Sturgeon, and Leanne Wood, Natalie Bennett, and Nicola Sturgeon, and somehow using their gender as some sort of issue. It is not an issue either way. Now, I don't happen to agree with any of their parties. It's got nothing to do with the fact that they're three women leaders. I don't agree with UKIP either, and they've got a male leader. So it's got nothing to do with it. Um, and I'm fed up of feminists constantly bringing gender into every damn thing. I'm sick of it. That just proves that they are actually a very divisive movement. Because if they really, really, really believe in equality, then they will accept that there are many situations that really are gender neutral situations. And that's why I find it difficult to debate in a reasonable way with feminists, because they automatically take a victimhood perspective. I mean, this isn't universal. I have been in a few civil debates where we have found common ground. The last debate I had online went quite well, I have to say, because in the end, we ended up talking in reasonable terms, and I said, okay, I think that I wanted to reach out and I said, look, I don't disagree with every single thing you're saying, because this young woman wasn't what I would call a feminazi. She wasn't an extremist. However, she was using a lot of the sort of feminist lines that I would take issue with. But in the end, we found common ground. Now, I would like that to be the situation more often, because actually, I really, really don't believe that all feminists are fanatical man-haters. I don't believe that. But I do believe that most feminists have a victimhood mentality. I do believe that. And that's problematic, because if you are willing to tie yourself to a movement and you're saying that the movement is pushing for some sort of cause, then you're not going to get wider support by constantly retreating into a victimhood mentality, because then people will just think, well, wait a second, are you not willing to take any sort of responsibility yourself? Are you not willing to sort of acknowledge that there are some contradictions in some of the things that you're talking about? I mean, I just find it becomes very nauseating to try and constantly argue with this. But sometimes I feel I have to, because the sort of propaganda they put out and the sort of divisive language they put out, unfortunately, you can't just ignore this, because they do have enormous power in large segments of the media and definitely in politics. You know, the irony is feminists continuously focus on the fact that the majority of politicians are male. And that's true, about two-thirds of MPs are male. But they ignore the fact that most male MPs endorse the feminist mentality. If you look at all the party leaders right now, they pretty much all subscribe to um, feminist thinking. I mean, that time the T-shirt thing was going on, and you know that feminist lobby group wanted the party leaders to wear their T-shirt. They coerced Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband into wearing it. Maybe that's because Mr. Clegg and Mr. Miliband really do see themselves as feminists. Um, Certainly in the case of Miliband, although I don't know about Mr. Clegg, but um, Cameron, to his credit, didn't buy into that. But nevertheless, all the parties, even UKIP now is starting to do it, are starting to try and please the feminist lobby. UKIP to a lesser extent, but the others definitely do that. Now that shows that actually, just because there isn't women in Parliament doesn't mean that there isn't feminism in Parliament, because there absolutely is, given the fact that a lot of male MPs are feminists. It's another interesting phenomenon. Feminists say, oh, but we welcome men. If that is the case, then why do you not acknowledge the fact that a lot of male MPs would see themselves as feminists? So there's a contradiction in that. I'm just fed up with this constant victimhood mentality of, oh, we are downtrodden, and if you don't agree with us, it must be because you're a male chauvinist. I mean, I've had that thrown at me when I've been in an argument with someone who describes himself as a feminist. I'm not going to go into details about it because it's someone I know closely. That's not my way to sort of open up the closet online in that way. But let's just say this is someone I know quite well, and we were in quite a heated argument recently over something really trivial. And that person identifies herself as a feminist. She immediately threw out at me, "Oh, you're a male chauvinist." Now, this issue had nothing whatsoever to do with male or female issues. It wasn't a gender debate at all. It was something that was completely unrelated. And the fact that I had defended my case just meant that, and that shows to me that feminists do have a mentality of not equality but privilege. I.e., I'm a woman, so I need to be treated like a princess. And again, there's contradiction in this because feminists will talk about women going their own way, but what they want is equality but not responsibility. And actually, they already have legal equality, but they don't want to take responsibility of recognizing that in many situations it's got nothing to do with gender. It's this constant victimhood peddling, and it doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help women. It doesn't help women in terms of getting a sense of empowerment. I really don't see how that helps. If that is really what the goal is, to give women a sense of empowerment, then be responsible and don't interpret every single situation as, on one hand, it's like they want to shout down men and act as if they're powerful, strong, independent women who can think for themselves and who can say whatever they want. And how dare any man who challenges me? But then if a man dares defend himself, oh, he must be a chauvinist pig, he's picking on me. Grow up. That is honestly how a lot of modern feminists come across as spoiled little girls who throw a tantrum when they don't get their own way. And I don't really care if that sounds patronizing because it's the feminist movement that constantly patronizes everybody else. Constantly. So you can't have it both ways. If you're going to talk about being strong and independent, then stop being so damn sensitive. Stop reading every single situation like it is about sexism when most of the time it isn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm not saying there isn't um, misogyny in society. There is, just as there is misandry as well. I would say they're roughly 50-50. Um, but I'm just fed up with feminists constantly using gender in their arguments and constantly, well, we know why they do it. It's to legitimize themselves that they actually have a valid cause, when actually, um, Western women are among the most privileged human beings on earth, quite frankly. Today, I mean. Anyway, I'll stop ranting now because I don't want to give the impression that I'm doing the same thing. I don't see myself as a victim. I know there's men out there who join the MRA movements and father's rights movements and so on. I feel those guys really have had a rough time, and I don't blame them for doing that. Personally, though, I don't see myself as a victim. I'm quite relaxed. I have problems in my life, but the difference between me and feminists is I don't blame women for my problems. Feminists blame men for their problems. And that's the difference. My problems are a result of a combination of factors, and everyone has problems. Um, does it bug me? Sometimes it does, yeah. And sometimes I do feel life can be stressful, but I don't constantly blame other people for my problems because part of the reason is some of my problems are my own fault. I'm adult enough to admit that. The feminists never, ever, ever take responsibility for their own problems. They will always blame men for the mistakes that adult women make. And it is another area that just, and I'm going to end up repeating myself. Let me know your thoughts. I really, really would like to hear from any female subscribers. Please do let me know your thoughts on this. I'd like to hear from feminists. as well. Maybe you think I'm full of shit. Maybe you want to throw out an argument. But I will say this: if you're willing to leave a comment below that is civilized, that is reasonable, I'm prepared to engage with you and have an adult conversation about these issues. But if you're just going to sit behind your screen and call me a pig or a chauvinist pig or whatever, I'm not going to waste time with you. And that applies to anyone that I disagree with. I'm not going to waste time with anyone who opens up any debate with an insult. And I've had this a lot recently. It's a pity because I always try to be objective in my videos, but I have had it happen. It's been the same for, I made a video about UKIP and someone, not one of my subscribers, someone else, just came on the channel and said, oh, you're a lefty tosser. He or she hadn't even bothered listening to what I had to say. I'm actually not a lefty, I'm a centrist. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you.